Though it's still winter, the weather has been intermittently spring-like here in the Midwest. Snowdrops, crocuses, daffodils, and hyacinths are beginning to bloom. Birds are chirping, and the sun is shining longer each day. It's time to get outside. Hi, my name is Carrie Hayden. Join me today as I celebrate the beauty of the coming season through a little spring and Easter decorating. Learn how to start seeds without any special gardening gear for beautiful cut flowers all summer, and follow along as I share an approach to tackling messy flower beds that does not overwhelm or exhaust. Plus, stick with me as I share a favorite high-protein, toddler-friendly fun snack, whip up an easy make-ahead dessert for company, and give a few tips on how to enjoy hosting more while stressing less. Many of us are familiar with the aphorism, "Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good." Well, I've really taken that saying to heart. If you would ask somebody who really does excellent painting work, they would tell you that preparation is key to a good paint job. First, you might start by lightly sanding the surface that you're going to paint, then thoroughly wiping it down, perhaps maybe using a degreaser along the way. Well, I knew here at this dining table I had limited time while my toddler was napping. I needed to do homeschooling with one of my kids while she was asleep. I needed to start dinner. Plus, I really wanted to get outside while the weather was nice and start seeds. I also, on this day, was feeling tired after several nights of restless sleep, due mostly to pregnancy heartburn. The thought of first finding the sandpaper, then employing it, then wiping down the table and vacuuming up the mess made by sanding all throughout the dining room afterward. The thought of doing all of that was enough to deter me from even starting this project. But I thought, I'm just going to do what feels reasonable and doable right now. One of the kids, we've never figured out who, spilled something on the table that when I went to wipe it up, it had completely dissolved the paint. It ate through all the way down to the wood. So that was a little concerning. We never determined what that substance was, but that bare wooden spot, in addition to some stains that had occurred from artistic endeavors, they were kind of just not looking very lovely, and I've been staring at them all winter, and I really wanted to put a fresh coat of paint down so that when I did my Easter decorating, it would have a nice blank canvas behind to contrast with it. So what I did, instead of doing the sanding and all of that, is I just decided to thoroughly wipe the table down. I used Dawn Power Wash and clean rag. Then I made sure it was completely dry, found a bucket of paint, a screwdriver, and a paintbrush. That's all I needed. I quickly brushed on a coat of paint over the entire surface of the table, and I focused a little more on certain areas that were in rougher shape. All told, from wiping down the table to cleaning up afterward, it was about 30 minutes. It's holding up well, it looks good. I don't want to let the perfect be the enemy of good. Here, this pink hyacinth is the first flower that I have cut from our yard to bring in this spring. I love growing flowers and making flower arrangements to put all throughout our house and to give to friends and neighbors all summer. Making these flower arrangements from my garden is among my greatest pleasures during the warm weather. And there are several reasons why hyacinths are wonderful, and they're great for beginner gardeners. First, they're easy to grow. I planted these hyacinths as bulbs in the fall several years ago, and that's been that. I give them no specific care, and they come back every year in the early spring. Though I would say they are blooming less prolifically now than they did the first couple of seasons, and I've read that they lose their vigor over time, so that's to be expected. Secondly, hyacinths are great because the deer don't eat them. We live in a neighborhood that is overrun by very bold deer. So if a flower can survive the deer, I'm very excited. Finally, in addition to being extremely fragrant, hyacinths last in a vase as a cut flower for quite a while. I cut this hyacinth before all of its blooms had opened, which prolonged its vase life, but the blooms have been opening in the vase over the last few days, looking more beautiful and emitting more of a lovely aroma than ever. So if you're thinking about trying new flowers for next spring, consider planting some hyacinth bulbs this fall. I got a shot of what the hyacinth looks like now, and I put it at the end of the video. Starting seeds can be an inexpensive way to experiment with growing new things. You can certainly spend a lot of money on seed starting trays and grow lights and seedling heat mats, but you don't have to. I wouldn't even have the space to set up something like that in my house. So last year, a friend told me about starting seeds in milk jug greenhouses. So all winter, I diligently collected and saved clear gallon milk jugs. Distilled water jugs are also great for this. And I had a mountainous pile of them accumulated in the garage by the time January 1st rolled around. Then I used an X-Acto knife to cut 3/4 of the way around the circumference of the jug, creating a hinge at the base of the handle. Next, I used that X-Acto knife to poke drainage holes in the bottom of the jugs. I removed the caps, the lids, and then I filled the base of the gallon jug with potting soil and seeds. I watered them, labeled them, and I used, what did I use? Oil pastels, because they don't fade in the sun. And then I duct taped the opening that I had created with the X-Acto knife. I duct taped that closed and placed these milk jug greenhouses out in our yard in the sun. And I got tons of seedlings this way. And I was able to transfer them to my flower beds and successfully grow many flowers, which I loved. However, last spring I also experimented with simply using large, transparent clamshell food containers, such as Costco's strawberry, plum, and grape containers. And I found that they required much less preparation, as they already had a hinged, resealable opening and numerous drainage holes. Plus, they nested together as I stored them up over the winter, so they took up less room when they weren't in use. Additionally, a benefit of the clamshell containers is that I didn't have to deal with untaping and retaping the duct tape along the openings when the weather vacillated between warm and cold, as it frequently does in the winter and spring here in Ohio. Because you do have to open the greenhouses after the seeds have germinated if temperatures climb above around 60 degrees, or at least in my experience, the seedlings will die. You do also have to make sure to water your greenhouses when the soil dries out. This time, I also decided to line the bottom of the strawberry containers with paper towels so that the soil doesn't wash out, which I noticed was happening after a heavy rainfall last week with some seeds I had previously started and which I was storing in sleds on our back patio so they could be watered from the bottom, which my understanding is that's a good practice. However, the sleds filled up completely with water, and some of the soil came out of the containers through the drainage holes in the bottom. So I decided to take all the containers out of the sleds and just place them tentatively where I think they might eventually go in the flower beds once the weather is consistently warm and it's time to plant the seedlings in the ground. This means I'll have to periodically open the lids to water them, but that's not much trouble. Except for right now that I'm in my 8th month of pregnancy, I'm noticing that I can't really bend over to garden or tie my shoes or anything else because it gives me terrible heartburn. So I realized I just need to get down on my knees instead. I love having an old beach towel with me for gardening to kneel or sit on, whether pregnant or not. Then give me an audiobook or a podcast to listen to, and I could not be more content. There are ways to make tasks that could feel tedious into little moments of enjoyment and respite, and sometimes it's just the little things like having a cotton towel to kneel on so I can get really comfortable on the ground, and something really interesting to listen to that can make all the difference for me. One of my favorite podcasts to listen to when I'm gardening or driving or really any other time is called Strong Women by the Colson Center. It's typically interviews with interesting, intelligent Christian women of all ages from around the world on a variety of topics. And I always feel both encouraged and edified when I listen to it. I'll leave a link in it to the description box, or I'll leave a link to it in the description box in case that sounds like something you might be interested in. The color palette I'm going for in my flower beds is soft pastel pinks, purples, whites, and light blues. So I chose some pale pink zinnia seeds to try out today. When I was placing my seed containers, I was starting to run out of room in the flower beds because of last season's dead plants. So I started pulling the remains of my Potomac apple blossom snapdragons out of the ground, tossing them into a yard waste bag. I can easily get overwhelmed by how much work needs to be done to spruce up the yard and the flower beds after the winter. So I have to divide up the job over many days, and sometimes I ask the kids to help as well. When I do that, I normally give them each a pair of gardening gloves and a small, well-defined section for them to work on. And that's what I do for myself too, even if I don't have help. I just take one little tiny spot, like a portion of a bed, and I just say I'm going to get this little spot cleaned up. That way it's not overwhelming. And then I just keep doing that until eventually I get everything done, or most everything done. It's amazing how much you can accomplish that way. And again, I don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Sometimes good enough is good enough. This is a watercolor painting that my son made a couple years ago with a neighbor who is a gifted artist. They've made a painting for almost every season, and it's been a lot of fun to change them out as the seasons change. So while I was growing up, several times my mom made something called peanut butter Play-Doh, which I thought was such a fun treat. Her recipe involved powdered milk, peanut butter, and honey, and that's basically what my toddler and I are making here, except I substituted the powdered milk for collagen peptides. Who knows whether collagen peptides are really as wonderful as they claim to be. However, I bought some a while ago, essentially hoping they would be a wonderful asset to my health, thinking I would add a scoop to my coffee, only to discover that I could discern a taste, despite claims to the contrary, and I did not enjoy that taste. So I started mixing them into my own version of my mom's peanut butter Play-Doh, and I think the result is delicious. It's fun for toddlers to help make and also to play with. This is a snack that sometimes I forget about, but I used to make it all the time. So if you have people in your house who struggle to eat enough protein and calories, this might be a good one to try out, but it's just fun in general to do with kids. And you really can make as much or as little at a time as you want. I pretty much just start with equal amounts of each ingredient. So a scoop of peanut butter, a big squeeze of honey, and then a few scoops of the collagen powder, and I stir, and if it's too soft, then I add more collagen. If it's not sweet enough, I add more honey, and I just kind of taste and add and mix, and then we kind of just mold it and play with it and snack. This is a snack that you can definitely just leave out on the table for an afternoon and people grab little pieces of it and fuel themselves. So lastly, we were getting ready in the next couple of days to have company over, which I had not really planned ahead for very well, and I wanted to serve them something delicious for dessert, but I wanted to do it with ingredients I already had on hand. Additionally, I wanted it to be something I could make a day or two in advance so that I could focus on doing other cooking and cleaning closer to the time of their arrival. While I love having people over and spending time with friends that I don't often get to see as much as I'd like to, I do not particularly enjoy the time of preparation leading up to them coming over. I can tend to get a little overwhelmed and stressed out. I want them to feel loved, and I want the house to feel inviting and comfortable. Um, but I don't know, sometimes the whole process can feel like a lot. So, some strategies that have helped me to feel more comfortable with hosting for meals is, firstly, I realized that I need to plan menus that involve as many make ahead components as possible. I do my grocery list and shopping at least 3 days before, then try to prepare as many elements of the meal in the days leading up to the event. Secondly, I gladly take shortcuts as long as it doesn't interfere with the quality of the end product. For instance, if I can buy pre-chopped candied pecans to go on a salad that have the same ingredients that I was going to use anyway, but they're already just done for me, I'm very open to doing that instead of making my own. I'm also very glad to use, for instance, a pre-washed spring lettuce mix as opposed to chopping and washing a head of romaine lettuce. Thirdly, I try to get myself dressed and my makeup done if I choose to wear makeup for that day. I try to do that early in the day because I often get busy afterward, closer to the start time of the meal, and I just feel more prepared if I at least know I'm wearing something clean and matching. And then I'll often try like 20 minutes before my guests are due to arrive. I'll normally go back upstairs and like brush my teeth and put on some lip balm or something, just like freshen up a little bit. Fourthly, I do get the whole family involved in preparing for company coming over. Many hands make light work, and hospitality is the responsibility of our whole family. I ask the kids and my husband to help quickly tidy and make sure that the guest bathroom that's on the main level, which is when we have company over, the bathroom that would typically be used, make sure it's been freshly cleaned before our guests show up. Finally, I am very happy to accept and even sometimes request my guests' help. I find that it often seems to help put guests at ease when they have something to do with their hands as they settle in while we talk and we complete the final preparations for the meal. It's always my goal for my guests to have a seat, a drink, and a task if they want one. For moms of young children, though, I often just want them to sit and eat and drink because I know how that is. But I never want to make my guests uncomfortable by seeming frazzled or distracted or unable to join in conversations because I'm too busy working on the meal or dishes or whatever. The whole point of having them over was so that we could spend time together. I want to serve them without seeming like I'm serving them as much as possible. So anyway, for dessert, I landed on making creme brulee. It's easy. You can make the custard several days before you want to serve it. You just need cream, vanilla extract, or vanilla bean paste, or a whole vanilla bean, sugar, egg yolks, and a torch. I made the custard in a blender because I was making a double recipe, and the blender has a handy pour spout, so that makes it easier to pour it into the ramekins. Then I baked those ramekins that were full of custard at 325 in a hot water bath. I let them cool to room temperature, and then I popped them into the refrigerator to chill down overnight. And then right before serving, I took them out of the fridge, topped them with more sugar, and melted the sugar with a little kitchen torch. After you brulee the sugar, you have to let it sit for a minute, and then it forms a crunchy, sweet shell that you get to crack open with your spoon. And that crunchy shell contrasts nicely with the cool, vanilla-flavored custard. I base my recipe on one from Southern Living. I'll put a link in the description box, but I don't do the part where they tell you to heat the cream before baking it. I skip that because I tend to use vanilla extract or vanilla bean paste instead of using a whole vanilla bean, so there's no point in heating up the cream. That's for infusing the flavor of the bean into the cream. One of my favorite aspects of spring and Easter is the reminder of what God has accomplished for us through Jesus' life, death, and resurrection. As I place seeds, which seem to be so lifeless, so dead, into the soil, which seems so much like a burial of sorts, I know that they will one day spring up out of the ground, full of beauty and life and fragrance, just as Jesus arose triumphant from the tomb on Easter Sunday 2,000 years ago, and just as we all who love him will one day too. I hope that when you look at seeds this spring, you will be reminded of this. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.